Your thumb just tapped a glowing rectangle on your bedside table, silencing a shriek you chose and scheduled. You blinked at the number it left behind, 7:03. A jolt went through you, not an alarm, but a deadline. You have 17 minutes until the first meeting of the day. Your lungs tightened. You are already late for a future that hasn't happened yet. You swung your legs out of bed, your brain already scrolling through a phantom list. Shower by 7:15, coffee by 7:22, out the door by 7:41. The clock on the microwave, the one on the stove, the one in the corner of your computer screen. They are not just telling you the time. They are your overseers. They dictate your pace, your panic, your posture as you gulp down breakfast. This is the air you breathe, a world sliced into seconds, where your worth is measured in productivity per hour, where wasting time is a sin. You are living inside a tyranny so complete, you forget it's even there. But for 99.9% of human history, no human ever felt this. Not one of your 200,000 direct ancestors ever knew what it was to be on time. They never hurried to beat a traffic light, never refreshed a screen waiting for a scheduled notification, never watched minutes drain away like a lifeblood. The very wiring of your brain, the stress that knots your shoulders at 4:59 p.m., the dread that hollows your Sunday evenings, was forged in a universe without a single clock. And that mismatch is why you feel this constant, low-grade exhaustion. It's why you can be utterly drained by doing nothing, and why you feel guilty for resting. Your biology is screaming that this is wrong. To understand why, you have to strip away every minute, every hour, every artificial schedule, and journey back to the true rhythm you were built for. The rhythm that kept your lineage alive through ice ages and famines, and the terrifying moment we traded it for the tick of a machine. Picture the world your body remembers. You are not in a house. You are not even in a village. You are standing on a vast, windswept grassland under a sky so huge it feels like a physical weight. There is no Monday, no 3 p.m. There is only the world, and its raw, pulsing signals. Your day begins not with a shriek, but with a slow seep of gray light on the eastern horizon. You wake because the quality of the air has changed, because the birds have begun their first tentative calls. You stretch, and your first thought is not a list, but a single, ancient question. Where's the water? You move with your band, a handful of others who your pace is not rushed, but relentless. You are walking, always walking. Your eyes scan the ground for tuber plants, your ears tuned to the distant call of a herd. Your time is measured in footsteps, in heartbeats, in the growing ache in your calves. The sun is your only clock, arcing overhead from the time of soft light to the time of the hard shadow, when it hangs directly above you, and the world goes still and hot. Then a shift. A teenager in your group points, her body tense. Far off, a cloud of dust. Gazelles. The entire energy of your band changes in an instant. The slow, foraging walk snaps into a focused, silent stalk. Time doesn't speed up, it changes. It becomes elastic, stretching out as you creep forward, your world narrowing to the distance between you and the prey. Your heart is a drum in your chest. This is not an hour later. This is the stalking time. It lasts as long as it needs to. The chase, when it comes, is a volcano of explosive, screaming effort. 3 minutes of pure, terrifying sprint over uneven ground. It feels like a lifetime. It ends with a kill, or it ends with failure and heaving lungs. Either way, afterward, you collapse. You lie in the grass, your body throbbing, your lungs burning. For a long, long while, you do nothing. You just exist, letting the sun bake your skin, watching clouds drift. This is not laziness. This is the essential, non-negotiable recovery your body demands. This is the time of stillness. Your entire life is this flowing loop of effort and absolute rest, of slow, sustained foraging and sudden, explosive bursts, of intense communal focus around a fire at night, telling stories under stars that spin with a predictable, gentle slowness no calendar could ever capture. You feel hungry, you eat. You feel tired, you sleep. You feel the coming rains in your bones, and you move. Your rhythm is set by the land, by your body, by the success or failure of the hunt. If you had tried to live by an arbitrary schedule, to rest at a designated time when you weren't tired, to hunt when the light, you would have died. And if even one of the people in your direct ancestral line had failed to listen to this deep, bodily rhythm, you would not be sitting here today, reading words on a screen. So how did we go from a time of fluid, biological events, to a world ruled by the relentless, indifferent tick of a clock? The story doesn't start in a factory or with the first pocket watch. It starts with something much quieter and much more sinister, with the first human who looked at a shadow and decided to fence it in. The original tyranny wasn't of the minute hand, but of the calendar. The first great shackle was the season. When your ancestors stopped wandering and began to sow seeds in the earth, everything changed. Suddenly, time wasn't a cycle of feeling, it was a schedule of obligation. You couldn't harvest when you felt like it. You had to harvest when the grain was ripe, and only when the grain was ripe. A week too early meant starvation. A week too late meant ruin. The sun's arc was no longer just a marker of daily light. Its journey along the horizon became a terrifying countdown to winter. Stonehenge, the pyramids, those mysterious ancient circles, they weren't just temples. They were giant stone calendars, survival calculators. They were humanity's first attempt to trap the flowing cosmos in a grid, to see the future in the alignment of a slab with a star, because getting it wrong meant your children would die. The day itself was still free. A farmer in Mesopotamia or medieval Europe worked from dawn to dusk, a stretch of time that breathed, lengthening in summer, shrinking in winter. They followed task time. You finished milking the cows. You mended the fence. You took the bread out when it looked done. The church bell might ring for prayers, but it was a gentle, irregular rhythm in the background of life. Then, in the 14th century, in a monastery somewhere in Europe, a technological poison began to drip. It was the mechanical clock, and its first purpose was the most brutal schedule imaginable: to regiment the souls of monks. Monastic life required prayers at 7 specific, fixed times a day. The canonical hours. Missing one was a sin. But how do you get dozens of men to wake in the dead of night, at the exact same moment, for matins? Human nature being what it is, monks were terrible at it. They slept in. They were late. Their souls were in jeopardy. The mechanical clock was the solution. It automated the bell. Now, a gear-driven hammer would strike the bell, at the same solar time, every single day, summer or winter, rain or shine. No human error. For the first time in history, a community of people were yanked from their own bodily rhythms, from the natural desire to sleep longer on a cold, dark night, and forced to obey the arbitrary, unwavering command of a machine. Their bodies became secondary. The schedule was supreme. And it worked. The monasteries became models of eerie, machine-like efficiency. The towns growing around them heard these regular, imposing bells, and thought, we want that power. Town clocks began to rise in the squares, not to free people, but to coordinate them for the profit of the wealthy. The bell told the weaver when to start work, the apprentice when to be at the shop, the market when to open. Clock time began to wage a silent war on task time. Your work was no longer measured by what you accomplished, the field plowed, the cloth woven, but by the chunk of your life you surrendered to the place of work. The clock created a new, sinister concept, the man-hour, a unit of your life, now owned by someone else. But this was still a gentle tyranny compared to what was coming. The clock was in the square. You could leave it. You could go back to your field and work by the sun. Your body, though confused, could still find some refuge. The true enslavement happened when the clock left the tower and crawled onto your wrist. The pocket watch, and then the wristwatch, did something the town clock never could. It made time a personal anxiety. It internalized the overseer. Now, the deadline lived with you. It ticked in your pocket during a peaceful walk. It glared from your wrist during a leisurely meal. It created a world where you could be alone in a field, look at your watch, and feel a spike of stress because you were wasting the afternoon. The clock had successfully invaded your mind, convincing you that time itself was a resource you were constantly mismanaging. And then, the final, crushing blow, the factory. The Industrial Revolution needed the wristwatch, like a lungs need air. It needed armies of human beings to become cogs in a machine that never slept. Shift work was invented. The world was sliced into a repeating, unnatural cycle of 8 hours on, 8 hours off, around the clock. Day and night, summer and winter, lost all meaning. The machine demanded light, so you worked under artificial suns. It demanded consistency, so you ate at the whistle, slept by the alarm, lived your life in perfect, miserable sync with a steam engine. Your ancestral rhythm, the long walk, the explosive burst, the deep recovery, was shattered, replaced by the mind-numbing, soul-crushing monotony of performing one tiny task at the same speed, for hours on end. This wasn't just hard work. This was a form of psychological torture your species had never encountered. The body rebelled. They called it neurasthenia, a mysterious exhaustion of the nerves. We now call it burnout, depression, chronic anxiety. It was the scream of a biology being operated against its design specifications. But here is where the story gets strange, and where the true power of this tyranny is revealed. Because the clock didn't just change our schedules. It performed a silent, brutal surgery on the very way we perceive reality itself. Scientists now believe that the constant, precise measurement of time didn't just organize our lives. It physically altered our brains, shrinking our perception of the present moment to a sliver, and locking us into a state of perpetual, low-grade panic about a future that doesn't exist yet. And the proof is in a series of chilling experiments that show what happens to human minds when you take away every external clock, and what their shocking discoveries tell us about why you feel so trapped, and where the key to your cage might really be hidden. The experiments began in the 1960s, in bunkers and isolated caves. Researchers wanted to know, strip away all clocks, all sunlight, all schedules. What rhythm would the human body naturally find? They took volunteers, sealed them away, and left them with no way to measure time except their own guts. For weeks, they lived in timeless voids, and something extraordinary happened. Without the artificial grid of clock time, the subjects didn't descend into chaos. They found a rhythm, but it wasn't 24 hours. Their internal day stretched. For most, it settled into a cycle of about 25 to 27 hours. They would stay awake for 15 hours, then sleep for 10. They would eat when hungry, rest when tired. Their bodies reverted to a longer, more fluid beat, and they reported something profound, a sense of deep calm they hadn't felt in years. Time didn't feel like a river they were drowning in. It felt like an ocean they were floating in. But that's not the chilling part. The chilling part is what happened when they came back. Re-entering the clock world was a kind of violence. They described feeling a shocking, physical pressure, as if the world had shrunk around them. The regimented 24-hour day felt cramped, artificial, and suffocating. Their own natural rhythm, the one they'd just lived in, was now impossible. The cage had been opened, they'd stretched their wings, and then they were forced back inside. They'd felt what freedom was, and its absence was now a sharp, specific pain. That pain is what you are living with. Your natural rhythm isn't gone. It's suppressed, constantly overridden by a trillion tiny signals. The ping from your phone, the clock on the oven, the calendar notification. Each one is a tiny cut, training your brain to live in a state of chronic anticipatory stress. You are not stressed about the lion you can see. You are stressed about the meeting at 11, the email you haven't sent, the weekend that's already slipping away. Your brain's ancient threat detection system is firing nonstop at phantoms, and it is exhausting you. This is the final, hidden tyranny. The clock didn't just steal your hours. It stole your now. It convinced you that the only moment that matters is the next one on the schedule, making the present feel like something you are perpetually late for. Your ancestors lived in the present because it was all they had. You live in a haunted house, of futures that haven't happened and past you can't change, and your biology is paying the price. So where's the key? It's not in smashing your clocks. It's in recognizing the jailer for what it is, a useful tool that became a cruel master. The liberation begins not with rejecting time, but with reclaiming your body's right to its own rhythm, even within the cracks of the modern world. It's the walk you take without checking your phone, where your pace is set by your legs, not by a step count. It's the afternoon where you work in a single, deep focus until the task is done, instead of in scattered fragments until the clock hits 5. It's the courage to lie on the grass and do absolutely nothing, and to call that not wasted time, but the time of stillness, essential maintenance for the ancient machine of your body. That low-grade exhaustion you feel, it's not a personal failure, it's a rebellion. It's the ghost of that grassland ancestor, pounding on the walls of your skull, trying to remind you of the rhythm that kept you alive. The long walk, the explosive burst, the deep, guiltless recovery. You cannot go back to a world without clocks, but you can start to hear your own pulse underneath the ticking. You can, for moments at a time, let your internal day stretch back out to 25 hours. You can measure your life in heartbeats and sunsets and finished tasks, not just in minutes and productivity metrics. The next time you feel that Sunday evening dread, or the 4:59 p.m. panic, don't just blame the week ahead. Listen to it. That hollow feeling is the echo of a deeper time, a reminder that you are a creature built for seasons and sun and effort that ends, not for an infinite scroll of obligations. Your ancestors survived ice ages and predators to pass this life to you. They never handed you a stopwatch. They handed you a rhythm, and somewhere, under the noise of the world, it is still beating. The tyranny is in thinking you must live by the clock. The freedom is in remembering you are the clock.